Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Bassi. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. It's a blazing hot Monday here. Talk about weather fluctuations. We kick off with oil prices. $75 is where crude oil is now. But it's nothing to do with the geopolitical issues with Israel and Lebanon now. It's really more about the rate cuts that we saw from the U.S. Federal Reserve. By cutting rates, you are stimulating aggregate demand by making things cheaper, and that is expected to permeate through the rest of the U.S. economy. West Texas Intermediate 71.59, so they're still in that range-bound $70 region. To Asian stocks, Japan is closed today for a public holiday, so the markets won't be trading there. All we've got is the Shanghai Composite Index, which is up. I should mention the Shenzhen and the CSI 300, also Chinese index, is also up as well. We'll get to that because we got some news from China. The Hang Seng is up, so is the Kospi in Korea and the ASX 200 in Australia. What do we have to look out for this week? What to watch in this final week of September? We've got the U.S. hosting this Quad Leaders Summit, the Quadrilateral Security Alliance between U.S. President Joe Biden is hosting them in Delaware as we speak. So Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia. You've got Mr. Fumida, Prime Minister of Japan, and Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, that's also there as well. So we'll be giving more details on the Global Business Report. It's about the Indo-Pacific region and so on and so forth. Tuesday is Nigeria, the Monetary Policy Committee. In fact, they begin their meeting today. They will be deciding on the benchmark rate tomorrow. I've said already that I expect them to hold the rates where it's at, the 26.75. I'm looking forward to hearing what CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso has to say about the increase in the pump price of fuel that we saw this month and whether he feels that will feed into inflation. I expect him to talk about the deceleration in inflation in Nigeria year on year, month on month. And so a lot more to look forward to from the central bank, but I do expect them to hold rates. Wednesday, we get U.S. housing permits. In the UK, in the U.S., housing has been a major focus. Kamala Harris is expected to reveal more economic policies from her plans later this week. And as you know, they've cut rates. This is for August. Building permits are supposed to tell you how many construction companies are seeking permits to build more homes and office buildings and so on and so forth. So with a rate cut, now of course this is for August, the rate cut took place this month of September. It is expected that if mortgages are going to be cheaper, that that will spur demand for building more homes. So we'll get that on Wednesday. Thursday, it's U.S. jobless claims, looking at the number of people who are filing for employment assistance, or unemployment assistance rather. That is one of the metrics used to check U.S. jobs, U.S. labor market rather, in addition with the ADP and also the non-farm payrolls. Friday, Dr. Abati likes to talk about this index a lot, the PCE, Personal Consumption Expenditure Index. The Fed likes to use that. I think we're about the 2% range. We'll be getting that for August on Friday. I mentioned China. Let's get to China now. Pang Gongchen, who is the governor of the People's Bank of China, is expected to give an address tomorrow. It was announced today. It was an off-cycle address. It is expected that they will probably release some more policy guidelines as to what to do about China's struggling economy. So in addition to that, they also reduced the 14-day reverse repo rates, that's the repurchase rates. 1.8% is where it was moved down to. We saw government bonds in China, the 10-year government bond, fall by a basis point to about 2.03%. Bonds yields move inverse of prices. So if your yields are falling, that means your price is rising. If your price is rising, it means investors are buying your bonds. So that suggests that investors are optimistic about what to hear from China. But remember, Xi Jinping has been, for some reason, really reluctant as to putting more direct stimulus into certain markets. So we'll see what we hear from the People's Bank of China governor tomorrow. Here's a quote from Zui Zhang. He's the president and chief economist at Pinpoint Asset Management. He says, I do expect the People's Bank of China to cut the 7-day reverse repo rates as well as the reserve requirement requirement ratio in the coming months. The press conference Tuesday, that's tomorrow, will give financial regulators a chance to shed light on their policy stance. Youth employment in China is rising. Remember, China suspended releasing data on unemployment rather, because they said they had to go through their, the methodologies and redo it. So it's still climbing. We have August at 18.8%. July was 17.1. June was 13.2. So youth unemployment in China is climbing. And this is from, of course, their National Bureau of Statistics. We got a quote here from Dan Wang, who is the chief economist at the Hang Seng Bank of China. And she says it's increasingly hard for young people to find high-paying jobs as before, because in the past 3 years, the high value-added city services sectors, which used to absorb many fresh graduates, were in sharp contraction. In particular, real estate, which we all know the property sector has had issues, finance and IT. All right, we get to the UK. All this talk about low oil prices, low oil prices, low oil prices. This is what happens when oil prices are falling. In the UK, we're seeing fuel prices at the pump for petrol, PMS, and diesel falling at the fastest rate since November, December of 2023. So about £1.36, which is for unleaded petrol, PMS, and for diesel, £1.40, about 7 pence lower, both of them. And also, it is expected that there will be actually further fall in petrol prices over in the UK. Rack Fuel is a company that puts out these research points, and this is the spokesperson, Simon Williams, saying that it's really encouraging to see pump prices coming down so rapidly, which we know is good for drivers' wallets as it is for keeping the headline level of inflation in check. Of course, global oil prices and even the strength of the pound can fluctuate wildly, and that's something completely out of drivers' control. And he also says that based on wholesale pump prices, which is what retailers pay to buy the fuel in the first place, we know there's scope for further price cuts. So we very much hope that within the next few weeks, we'll see pump prices reach their lowest level in 3 years. One person that is really going to enjoy seeing that is Rachel Reeves. Adefemi Akinsaye already kind of gave a preview for that. The Labour Party conference, as Labour Party in the UK, begins today. Rachel Reeves is, of course, the focus. She's going to be giving a speech. It is expected to be a preview of the October budget speech. She'll give some clues as to taxes. She's also expected to defend the removal of subsidies for the winter fuel. So we look forward to hearing from her and seeing what comes later today. That's our update.
So a couple of things, Rotus. I want to talk about Nigeria. And the truth is, when are we now going to start tinkering with our own interest rate here? Because in 2 successive sessions, we've had a reduction of inflation. And by their estimation, inflation ought to have peaked now. You were talking about fuel price. I thought in one of their research papers, they were saying that the increase in the price of fuel might be negligible compared to the fact that we're in the harvest season. Is that tenable? Maybe when all this kerfuffle about Dangote and NF is finally stabilized and we have a projection of welfare price is going to go. So what is going to be now the attendant effect on inflation? Because honestly and sustainably, I would have wanted the central bank to start cutting interest rates, at least to give some signaling to businesses. Because all these interest rate rises all this while have been killing the prospects of a lot of businesses, and they're complaining bitterly. And that's why we don't have the fecundity for economic growth all this while. So I would like to see how that balancing act will play out.
All right, I do feel like there are similarities between Nigeria currently and the United Kingdom. And I say this because in that budget rebuild Britain, which Rachel Reeves will be presenting later on, it will be stabilization and reform at the same time. So the need to stabilize what's currently, or what they've said they've inherited from the Conservative government over the past few years, and also in need to reform. Only a few months back, the Tinubu administration had unveiled a stabilization plan as well, and they're in the process of trying to execute whilst also taking on some very bold reforms, hopefully to tackle some of the economic challenges that we've had. But some of the things that we're looking to see in terms of the detail of that budget, number one is to try and recoup that almost 40 billion pound tax deficit in terms of what should have been accrued as tax and what was actually realized. And they're looking to hire about 5,000 taxmen to go after those who are stealing the common wealth of the people. And in addition to that, like you said, defending the taking away the winter tax for pensioners, but also a few other things to give some hope to the British people after what has been a gloomy past few months from this Labour administration. Will they be able to deliver? The taste of the pudding is in the eating. We'll watch later on as she presents her speech today.
The Labour conference in London started in Liverpool yesterday. It's supposed to be a parade victory for Keir Starmer after the election. But what is happening now is that it's been overshadowed by concerns about freebies that he and his wife and others collected from Lord Ali, a sponsor of the party, eyeglasses, suits, designer clothing, which is unfortunate. The other issue that has divided, that conference is this issue that Rachel Reeves, Chancellor, addressed today in the Times of London and is going to address in her speech today at the conference. The argument about whether Labour is trying to impose austerity on UK in the October budget. She's going to say, well, it's not austerity. We are trying to plug the holes, the black hole that the tourists left behind, 22 billion, pounds, it is said. But already the Conservatives are also pushing back, and Rachel Reeves is also pushing back. She wants to set up a committee, a COVID corruption investigation committee. So there's a lot, going on in the United Kingdom in that regard. Meanwhile, British ultra-wealthy are trying to move away from, the United Kingdom to go to Monaco, Switzerland, other locations where they think that, the policies will be much better. As for China, the main issue in China is that youth unemployment has gone up. It's also that the real estate sector is still problematic, and people are calling for more stimulus. The repo rate has been relaxed for 14 days. Some support has been given to the banks, but is it far enough? No. Will China be able to achieve the 5% growth projection for this year? The analysts say no. Thank you very much.